This case is every parent and every child's worst nightmare.
We're dealing with a very cunning person, a person who we regard as very dangerous. Some describe him as a monster, and I think that's probably accurate.
A real-life boogeyman lurking around your bedroom window at night. A masked monster that finds his way into your home and abducts you straight out of your own bed. A predator so terrifying, so sinister and wicked that the media calls him Mr. Cruel. This is your warning right now that this is going to get extremely dark. Welcome back to another episode of Hot on the Case. If you haven't yet, please make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload from me. I also upload all of these episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so make sure you're following over there as well. I'm absolutely shocked that this case is not more well known. I know it's one of, if not the most infamous, notorious unsolved case in all of Australia, but other than that, I don't think it's really talked about that often, which is absolutely shocking because this is a predator that is a true monster. He's calculated, he's cunning, he's dangerous, and that's why he's been able to go uncaught for decades. So this is the uncaught masked predator that is known as Mr. Cruel. My name is Brianna and I'm hot on the case. Today's sponsor is Incogni, and I cannot wait to tell you about this. Data breaches are incredibly dangerous and lead to online scams and identity theft. And these breaches of privacy lead to in-person dangers as well. Criminals use this exposed information to learn everything they need to know about a person. Phone numbers, social security, stalkers can even use these breaches to find your home address. But they can't harm you if they can't find you, and that's where Incogni comes in. Incogni stops these data brokers and removes your data, protecting you from these threats before they're able to threaten you. Incogni Unlimited even has custom removals. If you stumble upon a site that has your personal information, all you have to do is copy the link and send a removal request to the Incogni team. They'll handle the rest, getting it removed and notifying you once it's done. Incogni is available risk-free for 30 days, so try it out for yourself and get your money back if you're unhappy with the service. Protect yourself and take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code HEIM at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/HEIM. This episode takes Hot on the Case all the way to Australia in the suburbs of Melbourne. I want to say Melbourne so bad. Until really recently, my mom lived in Melbourne, Florida. So definitely please take it easy on me if I slip up a little bit. In the 1980s and 1990s, the suburbs of Australia were considered a pretty safe place to live and raise a family. Crime rates were low, people trusted their neighbors, but unbeknownst to them, evil was lurking in the suburbs of Melbourne, Australia. A real-life boogeyman, a masked predator that broke into your home in the dead of night and preyed on little girls. The first confirmed attack of Mr. Cruel happened in the suburb of Lower Plenty. The name of this family has never been revealed to the public. It was the night of August 22nd, 1987. An intruder wielding a large hunting knife and a handgun cut the phone lines of this family's home and broke in by removing a pane of window glass from a window in their living room. Once inside, the intruder crept around the family's home until he found the bedroom of the sleeping parents, forcing them awake and into a real-life nightmare. At gunpoint, he bound and gagged the parents and locked them in their wardrobe. He told the parents that everything was going to be okay. This was just a robbery. He was just going to take some money, a couple valuables, and then he was going to leave. But the parents could hear this stranger begin walking towards their sleeping children's bedrooms. First, he went into the bedroom of their 6-year-old son and tied him tightly to his own bed before making his way to the bedroom of the couple's 11-year-old daughter. This monster forced this little girl out of her bed and into the bathroom where he sexually assaulted her. An attack that was described in the local newspaper as, quote, particularly violent and extremely traumatizing. And it was through this attacker's brutality that the media quickly began calling him Mr. Cruel, which I honestly believe is probably one of the most terrifying names ever given to a criminal that I've ever heard of. In total, this intruder was in this family's home for 2 hours, so he's extremely confident for his first confirmed attack. He's in no particular rush to get in and get out of this house as quick as possible. Most times when an intruder is breaking into a house for the first time, that's the goal. Get in, get whatever they're there for, and get out. But not this guy. He walked around for a little bit. He stole some clothes, he stole a little bit of cash. He even made himself something to eat in their kitchen before leaving. And once the family was able to free themselves, they contacted the police. And the case into catching this calculated, cunning, evil predator opened. And it's remained open ever since. This intruder leaves behind no evidence, no witnesses that can ever identify him. A sketch was made of the man that broke into this home and sexually abused this young girl, but it was extremely difficult because there were no identifying features that anyone was able to get from this sketch because this man wore a mask. It's like a black balaclava, like a ski mask with like an open face hole around the eyes. The family believed this man to be an Australian man in his 30s, about 175 centimeters tall or about 5'9". They believed that he had brown hair and that he had a slim build, so about like 70% of men out there. There really wasn't much to go on at all. They said that he was wearing blue jeans, a brown tweed sports coat over a blue waterproof zip-up jacket, and that he was carrying a gray cloth bag that he used to bring his own restraints. Reading over this first attack for the first time when I was beginning my research into this case, as someone who spends quite a lot of time researching criminals, this was just screaming out to me that this was not this man's first time ever committing a crime of this nature. This was clearly a seasoned predator, cutting the phone lines, removing the pane of glass from the window to easily break in without waking anyone up, targeting the parents first, and then leaving behind no evidence. It was extremely clear to me that this was not this attacker's first time, and the investigators did agree with me. Many people that have looked at this case do not believe that this was this man's first time ever breaking into a home, and likely not this man's first time ever assaulting a child or anyone. There had actually been a string of similar break-ins and sexual assaults in the surrounding area that they theorized could have possibly been committed by the same man. And the investigators warned the public to be aware that there was an extremely dangerous predator out there and that he was going to attack again. The next confirmed attack by this predator was about a year and a half later. It was the early morning hours of December 27th, 1988, at the home of the Wills family. Once again, the predator cut the phone line before breaking into the home at 11 Hillcrest Avenue in Ringwood. This time he was wearing blue overalls, and instead of an open face balaclava, this time the ski mask just had eyes and a mouth hole. Once again, he forced both the parents onto their stomachs, tying them up by their hands and their ankles and gagging them, before creeping over to the bedroom that their 4 daughters all shared. And as the intruder approached the bedroom that 4 little girls shared, he began to call out their 10-year-old daughter Sharon by name. Instead of taking 10-year-old Sharon to the bathroom like his previous victim, he forced her out of her home into his vehicle and abducted her. Once Sharon's father, John, was able to free himself and his wife, Julie, they immediately ran to check on their daughters, and it was one of those moments where you fall to your knees and you feel your heart sink into your stomach when they saw that their daughter Sharon's bunk was empty. A huge search was done, neighbors were terrified, and her father spoke to the media about their missing daughter. Your child being missing has to be up there with one of, if not the most terrible feeling in the entire world. Every minute probably feels like hours, every hour feels like days, every day feels like it's been weeks. Not knowing has to be the worst. Not knowing where your daughter is, who she's with, if she's okay. if you'll ever see them again. And it would be a long 18 hours until the Wills family got answers about their 10-year-old daughter, Sharon Wills. After being missing for 18 hours, Sharon's abductor dropped her off at Baywater High School that was about 10 minutes away from her home. She was dressed in only large green garbage bags. There was a garbage bag that had been tied around her shoulders, another garbage bag was over her head, and her eyes had been taped shut. But she was alive. After Sharon had been kidnapped, her kidnapper brought her onto the street and into his own car. He then drove her to an unknown second location that was somewhere in the suburbs. This was likely his home or some kind of safe house. There, he tied Sharon to a bed in a very small bedroom where he assaulted her for 18 hours. Sharon said that when he wasn't sexually assaulting her, he was soft-spoken, kind, and gentle. He then forced her to shower, brush her teeth, and also floss. He cleaned any evidence that could have been under her fingernails and also clipped her fingernails. This was to destroy any evidence or DNA. He then dropped her off just 10 minutes away from her home and drove off. These crimes are extremely well thought out. This predator is extremely calculated and cunning and dangerous because he knows how not to get caught. His knowledge on forensic evidence at this point in the 80s is pretty impressive. Some have even suspected that he could possibly be law enforcement because of his attention to detail and his knowledge about forensic DNA. Sharon was extremely brave. At one point, she even took off her blindfold so she could look around and see the bedroom that she was being kept in. They were able to put out a sketch of what his bedroom looked like, and she did her best to describe her kidnapper and her rapist. But since his face was always covered by a mask and he always had her blindfolded, she really couldn't describe any distinct features. Throughout the early days of the investigation, a possible theory on why and how Sharon was possibly chosen began to emerge. 6 months before she was kidnapped, The Sun published a photo of Julie and her 4 daughters in an article about how Julie saved her daughter Sharon's life after Sharon's bed caught on fire due to a malfunction with a heated blanket. If Mr. Cruel saw this article, it would explain how he knew Sharon's name and that Sharon shared a bedroom with her other 3 sisters. One thing is for certain, this predator knew that little girls lived in these houses that he broke into. He somehow knew details about both of these families. This was not random, but how much did he know? Was he not a stranger? Did he know these families personally? How long was he watching them? How long was he out there stalking them? Another 1.5 years would pass and they were no closer to answers when the predator attacked for a 3rd confirmed time. In Kittenberry on July 3rd, 1990 at 10 Menomonth Avenue, inside the rental home that the Linus family were currently occupying, the boogeyman broke in through a back window. The Linus family was originally from England and had been renting this home in Australia for the past 3 years. They were living in Australia for the father's job, but they actually were planning to move back to England after that very weekend, meaning that this family was literally days away from escaping this nightmare. That evening, the parents of the Linus family, Brian and Rosemary, were out at dinner with friends at the time that their home was broken into. This left just their 2 daughters, 13-year-old Nicola, who went by Nikki, and 15-year-old Fiona, home alone. At the time that this intruder broke in, Nikki and Fiona were sleeping in their beds. The intruder calmly entered this home and woke both Nikki and Fiona up at gunpoint. He tied 15-year-old Fiona to her bed before leaving with her little sister, Nikki. And as this intruder was leaving with Nikki, he instructed Nikki to bring her school uniform and a clean pair of underwear with them. He's an absolute sicko. He cut the phone lines, searched the home for money, stole the family's rental car, and their daughter, Nikki. The parents returned home from dinner. About 40 minutes later, they found their daughter, Fiona, tied to her bed, and their other daughter, Nikki, gone. After 18 hours went by and Nikki was not home safe, that's when everyone began to panic. This was how long the previous victim was missing for, and then a full 24 hours went by. It's been said that 90% of kidnapped children are killed within the first 24 hours that they go missing. And after every hour goes by, that percentage just goes up more and more and more. 48 hours went by and there were still no signs of Nikki. And then 50 long hours went by and Nikki was dropped back off about 10 minutes away from her home, bound and blindfolded, but alive. That day was Nikki's 14th birthday. She was rushed to a hospital before being reunited with her parents. After being forced into her parents' rental car, her kidnapper drove a few miles away before making her get out of that car and forcing her into a second car. We can only assume that this is his own vehicle. He then drove Nikki to an unknown second location in the suburbs. It's believed that this is the same location that he brought Sharon Wills. Here, he also assaulted Nikki and forced her to bathe and brush her teeth before dropping her back off 10 minutes away from her home. Her abductor told her when he kidnapped her that he would release her in exactly 50 hours. Another sketch was made, but once again he was wearing a mask, and even this time less of his face was showing. There were very tiny eyes and mouth holes this time. It's like each time he holds his victims for longer and longer time, and he's showing less and less of his face. Nikki's family faced quite a lot of criticism. People did not understand why they would leave their two young daughters alone in an area where there was a predator terrorizing girls around their daughters' ages. But to their credit, the last attack happened like a year and a half ago. People also got some odd vibes from Nikki's father, where he did a press conference like right after Nikki went missing, where he referred to her as the child. And if you've ever watched me for any extended period of time, you know that I always say it's a huge red flag to me when someone is missing or someone unfortunately is killed, and then someone extremely close to them, like a parent or a girlfriend, a boyfriend, will then refer to them not by their name but as like the child, the girl, the guy. It's like a way of dehumanizing that person, but also a way of like removing themselves from the person if they're guilty. But I don't think Nikki's father is guilty at all. He did have an alibi, of course, he was at dinner. But then it made it even worse because immediately after his daughter was found, instead of like comforting her, the exact same day that she was found, he did yet another press conference, which a lot of people thought was extremely odd.
And you'll understand that as parents, that obviously all we want is to have Nikki back. We have no remorse at all towards him or why he's doing it, or understand why he's doing it. But our real concern is with the child, and if she's listening to this as well, we're all there waiting to see her again, and can't wait to have her back with us.
If I may just ask you one or two questions, how is Nikki bearing up?
Considering all the circumstances, she's bearing up exceptionally well. We are very, very pleased at the moment as to how she has conducted herself over the last few days. And the
rest of the family, how are they coping?
I could say the same about all my family. Fiona and Rosemary have done exceedingly well in the circumstances.
Nikki turns 14 today, as I understand, sir. In one way, it's rather a sad occasion, a sad birthday.
It is sad in that sense, but obviously we are delighted to be able to celebrate her birthday in her company today.
So you will be having a celebration today?
If we can stay awake that long, yes, we will.
And I understand, sir, that the family were returning to England at the weekend. What are your plans now?
You are correct, we were due to return on Sunday. Obviously, given what's happened, those plans are being put entirely into limbo, and I'm sure will be changed. I've no idea when we will be physically returning, but certainly our previous plans will no longer be happening.
If I just may add one more question, sir, what will be your memories of Melbourne then?
As I said yesterday, that we've had 3 magnificent years in Australia. We have loved the country. and those memories will not change whatsoever in our eyes. And certainly speaking for myself, I look forward to returning to Melbourne. I was actually planning on coming back at the end of September to watch the Demons win the grand final, but I'm not sure that itself will happen. But we've certainly thoroughly enjoyed our 3 years here, and will still regard them as 3 very interesting and happy years.
Is there anything you would like to say to this man?
No, I don't believe that there's anything one can say to these people. I just hope that he can be helped, really.
This attack was connected to the other 2 by a similar MO and by similar victim profile, but not by any physical evidence, because once again, the predator did not leave any evidence behind. And just like with Sharon Wells, the investigators believed that the attacker chose Nikki Linus. Did he know Nikki? Did he know her family? Did he just get lucky that her parents weren't home, or did he know that? Did he know that it was Nikki's birthday, the day that he dropped her back off? From his victims, we couldn't determine what he looked like, but we could learn a little bit about his personality. The predator was soft-spoken and relaxed. He was very confident, and he used words like missy, bozo, and worrywart. He would force his victims onto their stomach before tying them up. He would also restrict them to a bed by a neck brace, which I'm sure was extremely terrifying and also very uncomfortable. One of his victims said, and I quote, "He appeared to be acting out a fantasy like he was married to me, and he showed me this by the affection he showed me and how charming he was to me." His victims describe a similar car that he used to drive them from their home to the second location, and through his victims, they were able to get a sketch of what the kidnapper's bedroom and bathroom looked like that they were kept at. His victims also reported hearing planes and planes landing, so they believed that this second location that he was holding his victims at was possibly near an airport. Now, none of this information gave the investigators a clear suspect, but they were hoping that they put out this information, someone that knew Mr. Cruel would recognize this information. Like, they know a guy that says words like bozo and lived near an airport, but once again, they were nowhere closer to finding this monster. The investigators on this case believed that Mr. Cruel started out as a burglar, and once he was an expert burglar, he escalated his crimes to the crimes that he really wanted to commit, which was attacking, preying, assaulting young girls. The fourth and last confirmed attack of Mr. Cruel happened less than 1 year later. Coincidentally, or possibly not coincidentally at all, this attack happened 1 day after the police began scaling back their investigation. April 13th, 1991, the day that Carmine Chan disappeared. Carmine Chan was born on November 5th, 1977 in Melbourne. Her family was originally from Hong Kong, but immigrated to Australia before Carmine was born to give their future children a better life. Her parents owned 2 extremely successful Chinese takeout restaurants. They were 2 extremely hardworking people that often worked up to 18 hours a day. They would work from 7, 8 a.m. to midnight almost every single day. One could say that these Chinese restaurants were very successful. They were lucrative enough that the family was able to move into an estimated $1 million home in Templestowe, which was a very wealthy suburb. In total, this mansion had 18 rooms. It was 2 stories, it had 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a study, a 3-car garage, a gym, a spa and sauna, a pool, and a tennis court. People in this area called this home a suburban fortress, locked behind a 2-meter fence and an electric-powered front gate. So in better words, if you had an entire city, an entire neighborhood, an entire block, this would not be the home that you would want to risk breaking into unless you were extremely skilled and had a clear target in mind. Carmine was the eldest of 3 daughters. At 13 years old, she was a bright, ambitious, hardworking, smart girl. All of the daughters were fluent in Chinese and English, and they spoke mostly Chinese at home, and they all attended an all-girls private school. April 13th, 1991 was a regular day for the Chan family. Carmine had a regular Saturday tennis lesson. She had breakfast and lunch out with her mom and sisters. Before her mom had to go back to work at the restaurant, so around 6:30, an employee of her parents dropped her and her sisters back off at her home, where they spent about an hour with their father, but before their father also had to return back to the restaurant, leaving 13-year-old Carmine alone to babysit her 2 sisters, which was a typical occurrence, since our parents were working 15 to 18 hours every single day. That night, Carmine was reading her sisters some stories. They watched some TV in Carmine's bedroom. And then a little bit before 9 p.m., Carmine and her younger sister, 9-year-old Carly, headed to the kitchen to make a late night snack, where they were surprised to see a stranger in a mask standing in their hallway. Believed to be Mr. Cruel, this man broke into their home by cutting an insect screen to open a window. He stood in the hallway in a gray-green tracksuit with a black ski mask and wielding a large knife. He said to the 2 little girls in a very threatening manner, "Do you see this knife? Where are your parents?" Carmine and Carly were forced back into Carmine's bedroom, where their youngest sister, 7-year-old Karen, was actually hiding behind the door crying. Carmine and Karen were threatened with the knife. They were bound and gagged and forced into a wardrobe while the perpetrator was holding their eldest sister Carmine's hair, as he told them, "I'm not going to hurt you." He promised the girls that he wasn't going to hurt their eldest sister Carmine either, that in just a few minutes it would be their sister Carmine that would come back and let them out of the wardrobe. But of course, this did not happen. The intruder then moved a bed in front of the wardrobe, barricading the door shut, before leaving the home with their sister Carmine. About 15 minutes after the intruder left with their sister, the 2 younger Chan girls managed to break free from the restraints and break free from the wardrobe, and they ran to call their father, screaming into the phone that their beloved elder sister had been kidnapped. Their dad rushed home, but by then it was too late. He found his 2 younger daughters hiding in the laundry room, but his eldest daughter, Carmine, was missing. Immediately, the police were called, and Carmine's younger sister tried their best to draw the man that had kidnapped their sister, but like always, the sketch did not leave much for the investigators to go on. A large search was done for Carmine, as well as a large manhunt for her abductor. A team went door to door. They questioned all known sex offenders in the area. Scent tracking dogs were brought in, which tracked Carmine's scent out a sliding door in the kitchen, through the garden, across the tennis court, and onto the street. They lost her scent about 1,000 feet from her home at the end of the block. This is where it's believed that her kidnapper had parked his car and forced her into the car and drove off with her. No ransom demand was given to Carmine's younger sisters, and although this family was clearly extremely wealthy, no money and no valuables were stolen from the home. The security gate was tampered with and the electrical fence line was cut, but this time the phone lines were not cut, which is why the 2 younger Chan girls were able to call their father. And unlike the other victims, the abductor wanted the police to believe that the motive for this crime was vengeance or possibly even a hate crime against the Asian community. On one of the family's cars, the kidnapper had covered it in graffiti. White spray paint literally covered the entirety of this car. It read, "Asian drug dealer, pay back, more and more to come." But from the very beginning, it was believed that this was a red herring used to distract the investigators from the clear motive, which was Carmine. It was clear, just like with the previous victims, that this was not a random attack and that this home was not chosen on a whim or at random. There were no signs looking from the outside that this was a home that children lived at. There were no toys outside. There was no chalk on the driveway. There were no bikes in the front yard. Why would Mr. Cruel go out of his way this time to leave behind breadcrumbs for police leading in the wrong direction? Maybe this time Mr. Cruel knew that he was getting sloppy, that he was getting too close to his victims, that he was leaving behind too much evidence that could lead the police right to him. Perhaps not, but more on that in just a little bit. Carmine's parents made a plea to the public for their daughter's kidnapper, for their daughter's safe return, and this was extremely emotional.
Please bring my daughter Carmen back to home because all my family love her very much, and the two sisters couldn't sleep and very upset. Your favorite dress here, Carmen. Come back and dress it. Please, release my daughter.
Carmine's kidnapping was linked to the serial child sex offender known as Mr. Cruel within 24 hours based on the similar victim profile and the similar MO. And after 50 hours went by and Carmine didn't show back up, just like with the previous victims, that's when the panic really began to set in for everyone close to this case. She was now missing longer than any of his previous victims before, but there was still hope that she would show up eventually. His first victim never even left her home. The second victim was gone for 18 hours. The third victim gone for 50 hours. Maybe he was just escalating the amount of time that they were missing each time. But hours turned into days and days turned into weeks, and it wasn't long that weeks turned into months, and Carmine Chan was still missing. 11 days after she was abducted, the United States FBI delivered a psychological profile on the elusive Mr. Cruel. And yes, the FBI agents that are making and delivering this profile, it's like Criminal Minds, like the BAU. They're analyzing his behavior to learn more about him as a person. The FBI believed that the predator that they were looking for most likely lived or worked close to where Carmine lived. But I would take it even one step closer. All of these little girls, their homes that he broke into, they're like 20 minutes away from the last victim. So I would confidently say that this is his safe zone and that he lives or works within this circle. The profile states that he likely works within a school system or in a profession that requires contact with a school and with children. And this is extremely interesting because this is something that I was theorizing when Mr. Cruel knew Sharon Wills by name. Does this man work for a school? Is he a coach, a tutor, a school bus driver? That way he would know where these little girls lived. He would know their schedule, likely. The theory became even more likely once you know that his last two victims, Carmine and Nikki, went to the exact same school. It was a private all-girls school, the perfect place for a predator that attacked little girls to want to work at. And once you start thinking about the possibility that Mr. Cruel works at this school or within this school system, it all starts to click together. He knew Nikki wore a school uniform. He asked her to take it before they left. Is this all a part of the fantasy? These little girls in their school uniforms? Is this the reason that he tried to confuse investigators and lead them to believe that kidnapping Carmine was racially or revenge motivated? Because he was scared that they would be able to link him to this girl's school that he possibly worked at? I mean, I personally have a very hard time even considering the fact that these two girls going to the exact same school was a coincidence. The psychological profile states that the offender has an intense interest in children, specifically children in the age group that he is assaulting. He will spend a great deal of time with these children in what appears to be selfless dedication to students. This apparent dedication may have even earned him recognition or awards, like Coach of the Year or Teacher of the Year. He would be friendly and polite, but also quiet and a bit introverted. If this man has a romantic partner, like a girlfriend or a wife, this person would be aware in some capacity of his perversions. Mr. Cruel's sexual arousal and gratification would be dependent upon this partner acting out a certain fantasy, a role, or even dressing up in a specific manner, such as in a schoolgirl uniform. At least one of his victims reported seeing a tripod and camera set up at the end of the bed that she was restrained to. The profile states that Mr. Cruel would have this homemade pornography, but he would also have commercial pornography, and this will be very important to him. These are like his prized possessions. The profile actually states that these would hold great personal significance to him. He will have photographed or videotaped these sexual assaults, and these are his trophies, but he would possibly be willing to swap them with other predators for even more child abuse material. The profile states that this man will present as an extremely likable man. His neighbors like him, his coworkers like him. He appears to have an extremely normal life. Kids like this man. In May of 1991, a new task force was formed called Spectrum in hopes of bringing Carmine home alive. 40 investigators were assigned to work this case full time. A $100,000 reward was offered for information leading to Carmine's safe return, and by June, the reward was raised to $300,000, and eventually this reward was even upped to over $1 million, but they were still no closer to finding her. Carmine Chan's mother, as you can expect, was extremely devastated, and as more time passed, more desperate she became. They say that there's no love like a mother's love, and Carmine's mother was willing to confront her daughter's kidnapper face to face, and this is a very dangerous predator, but she would do it if it meant getting her daughter back. She even offered her own life in exchange for her daughter's safe return. Without police knowledge, Carmine's mother actually secretly attempted one-on-one contact with her daughter's kidnapper. In the Sunday newspaper, she ran an ad telling her daughter's abductor to respond with a letter sent to a private postal address known only to the family. In this letter, Carmine's abductor would have to decipher a code to find the address to send his response to, and he would be able to decipher this code using information that only Carmine would know. It's extremely smart, and I do give her credit for it, but unfortunately, this also brought forth nothing. Almost an entire year would go by without answers, and the Spectrum Task Force was nowhere closer to finding Mr. Cruel or Carmine. And then 4 days before the anniversary of her disappearance on April 9th, 1992, a man was out walking his dog on a road near a landfill where he noticed that his dogs were obsessively sniffing the soil in this area. When the man knelt down to inspect what was taking all of his dog's attention on their walk, he found the skull of a little girl. Police were called, and they also found several neck vertebrae as well as Carmine's jawbone. This was along Edgar Creek, about 25 minutes away from Carmine's home. Her cause of death was listed as 3 gunshot wounds to the back of her head. This little girl was killed execution style. It was also determined that her body had been buried there for about a year, meaning that Carmine Chan was killed shortly after she was kidnapped. She had been dead pretty much the entire time. And this was devastating. And this was confusing for the investigators, the FBI, the Spectrum Task Force. Murder did not fit Mr. Cruel's MO, his pattern. Is it possible that they had a second predator terrorizing young girls in the same area? One that kills and one that doesn't? In fact, a lot of investigators believe, even to this day, that Carmine Chan's murder was not committed by the same man, Mr. Cruel. You can let me know what you think about that. I personally do believe that these crimes were committed by the same man. I mean, what are the chances that there's 2 calculated predators skilled at breaking into homes without leaving any evidence? Because you need to remember that Carmine Chan's home was called a suburban fortress. I only think that a burglar as skilled as Mr. Cruel would even attempt to break into this home. And when you pair that with the similar victim profile and the fact that Carmine went to the exact same school as one of Mr. Cruel's victims, I think it's pretty obvious that this was the same perpetrator. And I think it's a lot more likely instead of Carmine being kidnapped and killed by someone else, that Carmine was murdered because she recognized Mr. Cruel, that she somehow saw her kidnapper's face, like maybe in the struggle she ripped off his mask and recognized him, or was able to identify him in some other way, like maybe she recognized his stature, the way he walked, maybe she recognized his voice, and that's why she was killed. Carmine Chan's funeral was attended by over 800 people, which intended staff from her school, as well as the entirety of the Spectrum Task Force. And they continued to investigate her case full time for another 29 months before ending the task force. I've literally never heard of anything like this, but this task force was so extremely dedicated to finding Carmine and then to finding her killer. In that time, they investigated over 10,000 tips, they visited over 30,000 homes, and interviewed over 27,000 suspects, which included every known predator in the area. And I think that it's extremely likely that the man that they're looking for is not on the registered sex offender list. I think it's extremely likely that up to that point he had not been caught for any sex crimes, but let me know what your thoughts are. And in that time, the task force also uncovered a secret list of about 150 men that were subscribed to mail order child abuse material. And this group of men were described as, and I quote, prominent individuals. They were all questioned as suspects in the Mr. Cruel investigation and were all cleared. This is absolutely insane. I almost can't believe that this is even true. If you live in Australia, can you please confirm or deny this for me? But I read in my research that at this time, owning child abuse material, so like owning CP, was not illegal in Victoria, Australia. It only became illegal after this task force that I told you is made up of these extremely dedicated, passionate individuals. Like I would shake each of their hands personally. Well, they put together a presentation on why it should be illegal, and that's why CP is illegal in Victoria, Australia today. Not only that, they also passed multiple other laws to protect children, including laws against stalking and loitering outside of schools. At the time that the Spectrum Task Force concluded their investigation, they had 7 suspects that they believed could be Mr. Cruel. So they went from 27,000 suspects to only 7 individuals. And when they agreed to conclude their task force, they said that if another child was abducted, that the police were instructed to arrest all 7 of these suspects immediately. One of the most well-known and publicized suspects from the 7 was a man named Brian Elkner. Brian Elkner was a teacher for a high school and a university before moving to Melbourne with his family to continue teaching in 1972. Between April of 1972 and May of 1974, he attacked at least 5 teenage girls and 1 young woman in their homes, which sounds a lot like our Mr. Cruel. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty, but was released in 1975 after serving less than 5 years. Well, the Spectrum Task Force actually raided his home, and hidden away in his attic, they found a ski mask and a knife. But that's not enough to arrest someone. For 15 years, the Victoria Police did not release to the public that Mr. Cruel photographed and or videotaped his victims and his victims being assaulted, in hopes that one day they could find that evidence and convict someone. Their thought process was, if they release that information to the public, that it might spook Mr. Cruel into destroying that evidence. But to this day, none of these photos or videos have ever resurfaced. Brian Elkner could not be connected to any physical evidence and denies being Mr. Cruel, although he is still considered a prime suspect. Another well-known suspect is a man named Norman Lee. He allegedly knew of the Chan family, possibly went to their restaurant, and actually confessed to a friend of his that he was the one that kidnapped and killed Carmine. When they did a search of his home, they found children's clothing, children's school clothing, and they allegedly were also able to determine that Norman was a predator, that he was a pedophile, but there wasn't any evidence to link him to Carmine's murder or any of the Mr. Cruel attacks. Over the decades, there has been no shortage of suspects. There's just never been enough evidence to ever actually charge anyone. There are many other similar break-ins, abductions, and assaults that happened in the same area around the same time that could have potentially been committed by Mr. Cruel. In total, it's believed that he has up to 13 victims. This includes the abduction and sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl about 2 years before the first confirmed victim, but there are also other crimes that have an extremely similar MO, but the victim profile is extremely different, like a 14-year-old boy that was abducted and sexual assaulted, as well as multiple break-ins and sexual assaults of women in their 30s. To this day, the Mr. Cruel case remains open, and the police are adamant that they will keep this case open until it's solved. It is likely that Mr. Cruel is still alive today, that he is still out there somewhere. The thing about child predators is they are up there with criminals that are most likely to re-offend. It's like a compulsion, it's an addiction to them. Predators like Mr. Cruel won't just stop one day. If he didn't move out of the area and continue to commit these assaults somewhere else, it's likely that he died or was arrested for something else. Based on the limited information we have from witnesses, Mr. Cruel, if he was still alive today, would be in his 60s or his 70s. I believe wholeheartedly that Mr. Cruel worked within a school. I think he chose these girls for a specific reason, that he worked with them in some capacity. I actually went back and I looked at the dates of each of these abductions and then within the times that these girls were held captive, and they all fall around times that a teacher or someone that worked for a school would have time off of work. If these abductions and then the times that these girls were held captive didn't fall on a weekend, it was some other kind of school break, like summer break or holiday break. With the weekends, it could have been someone in law enforcement, but these girls were being kidnapped and held captive for days during Tuesdays in the summer. So I think it's extremely likely that Mr. Cruel worked with these girls if they were a tutor, if he was a coach or their teacher or a school bus driver. But I would think that the Spectrum Task Force, with how dedicated they were, would have looked into every single person that ever had any kind of connection with these girls. Unless this predator was so good at hiding his evilness behind a mask and he was able to talk to them and not give away anything. I mean, that's the only other thing I could think of, but I'm extremely interested to hear all of your thoughts on this case. And that is all I have for this week's episode. And I will see you ghosts and you ghouls all next week when we are hot in the case once again.